I did prepare a little speech. The reason I prepared a little speech, quite simply, is because this is something we haven't done before, and I'm so grateful that you've all managed to make it this afternoon, and on such a beautiful day as well, which is very unusual in this part of the world. It's great to see you all. For those of you who haven't been to the Stan Laurel statue before, welcome to the Stan Laurel statue. On the other hand, for those of you who have been before, welcome to the Stan Laurel statue. It's great to be here. 131 or the 131st university, just after of Stan's birth in Ulverston in Cumbria, or Lancashire, or whichever we prefer to actually mention. And for those of you who haven't been to a Beau Chumps session before, and after this afternoon almost certainly won't come again, my name is Mike Jones. I am the Grand Sheik of the Sunderland-based tent of the Sons of the Desert, which is the Laurel and Hardy Appreciation Society, as I'm sure you are fully aware. This is my Vice Sheik, Peter. Oh. Peter's also called Jones. We won't hold that against him, but it's probably a good thing for him that we're not actually related. Peter is the Vice Sheik, and those of you who know these things will know that Peter is in charge of vice in the tent. So he's a very good man to know. The tent was founded, or refounded, in 2019, just around the time that the Stan and Ollie film was released, that I'm sure you've all seen. And it was just about a year before this plague that hit, that's caused so many problems, etc. But, you know, it is what it is. My good friend Anne christened the coronavirus the granola virus, and that is a term that's actually gone worldwide now, which I think is dead cool. People actually mention it to me when they're emailing from America and all sorts of things, which is really good. We do have some special guests this afternoon. All the way from sunny Carlisle is George, who's on the phone. It's a question of priorities, mate. Two of his pals got bored and they've gone for a drink, which is quite understandable. We also have Grand Sheik Gary of the Dirty Work Tent of Wigan, and Julia and Simon and Jack, who've driven up from Wigan this morning. Not a bad journey, it would appear. So I'm sure you'll all join me in welcoming them here. My teeth have stopped working, all this filling that demanding director has put me under.
Go again, Mike.
Yeah, okay. We'll do that one again. Anyway, while I'm on, unaccustomed as I am to speaking, you see what I did there? Yeah. And knowing that I like the sound of my own voice, I think it's appropriate we do talk a little bit about Dockwray Square, why this gentleman's here, etc, etc. So, in 1895, the Jefferson family moved here from Bishop Auckland, and they lived in 8 Dockwray Square, which is approximately in that corner there, and you'll see a plaque on the actual building itself. They lived there until 1902, when they moved to a larger house, quite a grand house actually, called Ayton House, which is about a mile in that direction. If anybody wants to go there, I can show you. There's nothing there, it's just a cul-de-sac now, but nevertheless that's where Stan lived. In Dockwray Square, Stan would put plays on in the back garden with his brother Gordon and his sister Beatrice Olga. And Peter has a photograph that he's going to pass around just to show you that little situation happening. Dockwray Square was quite a grand establishment, quite large, but Ayton House was more grand. And what Stan did was he actually asked his father to convert the attic of Ayton House to make it into a small theatre. And the theatre was built by Arthur Jefferson, his father's workman, I guess. But we don't have any photographs of that, sadly. So I don't think it's an urban myth, I think it actually did happen, but nevertheless. The current Dockwray Square was built in the exact footprint of the original Dockwray Square. And Stan would actually play on these grassy lands. Grassy lands? On this grass. And Peter has a photograph of Stan with his pal on a horse right there with the highlight in the background. And I think it's extremely appropriate that Stan now has a brilliant view of the highlight, the North Shields highlight, which of course is a lighthouse in case you haven't figured it out. Well, it was a lighthouse, not a lighthouse anymore. GPS did away with that. About 100 yards in that direction are the Ropery Steps. Now the Ropery Steps are very, very similar to those steps in Los Angeles where the Music Box was filmed. And I would love that to have been Stan's inspiration for that particular film. We don't think that it is, and it seems highly unlikely, especially because Hats Off was made before it, and another Charlie Chase film was made even before that, and I've forgotten the name because it's not in my notes, but I can tell you if you need to know. Sad man that I am. I suggest you have a look at the steps. I believe there are 119 of them. There are 131 at the Music Box steps. the bottom of the steps is a pub called the Old Wooden Dolly. Now, Stan wrote to an awful lot of people in the later years of his life on his little typewriter in his flat in Santa Monica. And one of those ladies, or one of those people he wrote to, was a lady called Doris Short, who lived better, in Bedlington, about 20 miles in that general direction. And in one of his letters, Stan remembered falling in a barrel of fish guts in his Sunday best, beside a statue called the Wooden Dolly. So that pub has some significance, and there's a replica of the statue outside. If you get the chance to go down the 119 steps, worth having a look. Also down the steps is the North Shields Ferry, or the Shields Ferry in actual fact. Now the Shields Ferry in Stan's day, was known as the Halfpenny Dodger, because the fare was a halfpenny, a halfpenny, and Stan and his pals used to excel in dodging paying said fare. And we know for a fact that when Laurel and Hardy stayed in North Shields in 1952 and 1954 to play the Sunderland Empire, Stan took a trip, or more than one trip, on the ferry for old time's sake. Are you bored yet? You sure? Right, so how did the statue come to be here? This wonderful edifice, basically, which is resin, it's not brass or bronze. It's been repaired recently. In the mid-1980s, Persimmon Homes acquired the rights to develop this land because it was derelict. And they basically were approached by North Shields Council, who said, by the way, Stan Laurel lived here when he was a child. We think it would be a very good idea if you commemorated that fact, and you know, you can pay for it as well while you're on. North Shields Council also contacted a gentleman by the name of Bill Cuban. Bill Cuban was pretty largely responsible for the development of the Sons of the Desert in the UK. Not solely, he wasn't the first either, but he's a name that I'm sure you all know, and he was a splendid chap. Absolutely daft as a bottle of... Can I do that bit again?
Yeah, go again, Mike.
Thank you. Absolutely daft as a oh god, a minute. Can anybody help me? It was as daft as?
Box of monkeys.
Box of monkeys, that'll do. Box of frogs, ship's cat. He was crackers, but he was an absolute genius. Bill managed to engage, using the money that was put up by Persimmon and North Shields Council, a sculptor by the name of Bob Ollie. Not a joke, he was genuinely called Bob Ollie. He also did the statue down in Bishop Auckland. And this was the result. And it was unveiled on the 29th of March 1992 by a gentleman by the name of Huntley Jefferson Woods, who was Stan's nephew. Stan met him in 1954, they lived in different countries, etc. Bill Cuban was also there, and Neville Trotter, who was the MP of the time, you might remember the name, actually was here too. I think he basically wanted to just sort of, you know, get in there as a bit of publicity, etc. So that's the story of the statue, other than it was significantly repaired and restored in 2017. That video is on YouTube, by the way, which you can find if you wish to look at it. Anyway, one thing I didn't mention is we're not actually in a watering hole at the moment, and I would like to raise a glass to that gentleman there. So we're going to do a dry toast. So I hope you brought some with you. That's about as funny as it gets with me, but I'm not going to take the credit for that joke. That was Gary Dent's. Thank you, Gary. Anyway, dry toast. The genius, I don't know, use any adjective that you actually want. The extraordinary man that is Arthur Stanley Jefferson, Stan Laurel. Let's raise an imaginary glass to Stan Laurel.
Stan Laurel.
Stan Laurel. And thank you all so much for coming. I hope that wasn't too boring. And you maybe even learned something, I don't know. It now says on my notes, pause for applause. Thank you. Thank you very much.